Today is a red letter day because we have a brilliant artist with us today, Teresa Oaxaca. Teresa, welcome to Art School Live.
Thank you, Eric.
What are we doing today?
Today I am working on an ongoing portrait painting,
Uh-huh.
and I'm going to be showing you how to render silk, and sort of
Ooh.
clothing and things like that.
Ooh. All right, that sounds exciting. So we'll get right back to you. And thank you for being here, Teresa. I'm Eric Rhodes, publisher of Fine Art Connoisseur and Plein Air magazine. We're here whenever we can be, quite frankly, Art School Live, daily at noon on some days and some days not. We are experiencing a massive thunderstorm here in Austin, Texas. And we're a little late today because we couldn't get online. And so we might pop off. You never know. But we'll tell you more about that soon. Our guest today, Teresa Oaxaca, and she is going to show you some of the ways that she paints material, specifically silk. But she's a fabulous artist and lives this wonderful lifestyle. And you'll get to know more about her today. So hang in there. We also have a prize today. Our prize is a pair of value specs, which help you see values, really help you train your eyes to see the darks and lights so that you get your values right. Because if you get your values right, then it boils down to composition. And so you want to get them right. And I still use them, even though I've been painting for a long, long time, because there are times when I just get them wrong and they really help me. So we'll get to that prize today. For comments, all you got to do is leave a comment, tell us where you're from, and we will pick a winner. All right, let's get going.
It's Art School Live with Eric Rhodes. Now, here's your host, Eric Rhodes.
Hey, thank you guys for tuning in today. I'm Eric Rhodes, and we have something special for you. It's 10 steps to become a high-level figure and portrait artist. It's an ebook, and it's yours as our gift to you. It's really, really good, too, by the way. It's at realismlive.com/ebook. Once again, realismlive.com/ebook. All right. We'd love for you guys to subscribe to this. And all you got to do is go to YouTube and hit the subscribe button under Streamlined Art, or you can follow me at Eric Rhodes on Instagram or on Facebook at Eric Rhodes. We'd love for you to follow. And I should mention to you that we have a winner. The winner is of the last time we had a broadcast, Diane Dalton in Salt Lake City is getting my book, Make More Money Selling Your Art. So that's pretty cool. I want to tell you about something that's going on. If you notice on the set, let me step aside. I have my COVID self-portrait. If you remember, if you were on here during COVID times, of course, we're still in COVID times, but if you remember, we did self-portraits and we asked everybody to do self-portraits. And so I did one, and I did the one behind me, which is a fairly large portrait, one of the largest I've ever done. And I didn't change the light or anything. I was in the way my studio actually is. And so it was light coming from down above. And so it's kind of weird. Anyway, the reason I'm telling you that is we are doing a new challenge. Last week, we did the pumpkin challenge, paint a pumpkin in plein air. We announced the winners on Instagram. And the winners, the first winner got a seat to Realism Live. Second winners and third winner got their choice of any video that we produce of the hundreds that we've produced. Now, today, you have an opportunity between now and Monday to submit a portrait that you have done. It doesn't have to be brand new. It doesn't have to be fresh. It could be a portrait or self-portrait. It doesn't matter to us. We want to honor and celebrate portraits. And so if you go to my Instagram page at Eric Rhodes, you'll see all the details there about how to enter. You'll also find it on my Facebook page. But essentially what you do is you post your portrait, you tag me at Eric Rhodes, and then there is a, I think it's the tag is Realism Challenge, but double check my Instagram for that. And then we'll get you doing a portrait. All right. Now, coming up, I should mention that we have an incredible event. It's actually coming up next week, starting on Wednesday, the beginner's day of Realism Live. And then Thursday, Friday, and Saturday are the full days of Realism Live. And we have an incredible lineup of some of the top artists in the world. I'm not going to name them now, but you should go to the website Realism Live just to see them, because this is your opportunity to study and get a variety of different approaches in realism. There's most of these people are doing demonstrations, usually 90-minute demonstrations, sometimes shorter, sometimes longer. And you have an opportunity to study under some of the greatest minds in the world of art. And this is a lot of variety. So you have people who do things like impressionistic realism, and you have people who do academic or classical realism. And so you're going to get a feel for a lot of different approaches, but also it is a lot of different ways to paint, not just in terms of technique, but, it's still life, portrait, figure, landscape, plein air, etc. And that is Realism Live. And it's really incredible. And if you don't know how to begin, then you should consider doing our beginner's day. But if you register by the 7th, which is coming right up, you will get a bonus. We have 2 videos that we're going to give you. One, Mark D'Alessio's demo, and then another is a special Zoom meeting with artist Joseph LaRusso. And so you want to make sure that you sign up to get those. And Teresa, our guest today, is going to be part of this. We have an incredible lineup of people, and you want to make sure that you get into this. It's very exciting. And I noticed that what happens is that I was not painting along because I was hosting, but I was watching every bit I could in between getting ready for things. And I noticed that the next time I picked up my paintbrush to do a portrait, which was just a few weeks ago, I knocked it out of the park, and I couldn't figure out exactly why, but I realized it was from watching Realism Live and seeing these incredible artists and seeing what they could do and how they could teach me, and seeing their different approaches and techniques. And so you have an opportunity to learn from some of the world's greatest, and it is a terrific thing that's coming up. And of course, you can study at home and be a part of your own your own house, right? You don't have to go out to do it. So anyway, it's really fun. We have Teresa Oaxaca back on. Teresa's got her camera lined up. Looks like you're already painting, Teresa. And today she's going to teach us how to paint silk and paint some materials. This is a piece that she's already doing. Teresa, I've told Teresa in the past that we need to do a portrait. I have, if you can't really see them right now, but I have this studio is filled with portraits by the world's greatest living artists, and now 3 of them are now deceased. That includes Daniel Green, Nelson Shanks, and Timothy Teese. And this is an incredible portrait collection, and we really need to get Teresa to do my portrait. But I told her I would go in costume just so that she could kind of stick with her theme. So I'll wear a wig or something, Teresa.
I think that was my suggestion because we were in Williamsburg.
Are you there?
Oh yeah, I'm here. Oh wait.
All right, let's see if we can find her. There we go. Okay. All right, so let's go ahead and get started. And I apologize if the internet's a little bit rocky today. It might be on my end.
Okay. Well, can you hear me, Eric?
I hear you great, Teresa.
Oh, great. Yeah. Now, I was just saying, I think that was my idea to put you in the George Washington wig in Williamsburg.
I think it is your idea, yes.
Glad you have not forgotten. Well, so this is the portrait I wanted to show the viewers today. And this is something I started during the pandemic. And I've been going in a direction where I've been melding portraiture with landscape and still life. And you can't see the still life right now, but it's a little bit lower down on the painting. And obviously like fancy clothes and things. And so one of the challenges when you do this is integrating the figure into the landscape. And I do this in 2 ways. One of the ways is that I actually go for more of an imaginative landscape. And so I've been doing a little bit of picture hopping where I've been including historical copies, if you will, in some of my scenes.
What is the story that you're trying to portray here?
Well, I have been looking at a lot of my favorite old masters. So here's a Rembrandt Christ Crossing the Sea of Galilee copy, which was stolen in Boston at the Isabella Stewart Gardner. So I've never seen it in real life. This one's a Watson and the Sharks. This is one of my favorite paintings I ever saw when I was a little kid at the National Gallery in DC. And this is a one that kind of rings closer to being an artist. It's a 19th century painting of a man who was named Roger van der Weyden, and he painted battle scenes. So he's painting a battle scene basically right here and kind of ignoring the world around him. And then I've got I guess I have an interest with just the way artists are interacting with history and the world right now. And
Teresa, when I was maybe 10 years old, my dad took us all to the World's Fair in 1964, and way before you were born. And we went to the Frick. I didn't know it was the Frick at the time. I'd never been to a museum, and I'm like, Dad, I don't want to go to a museum. This is boring. And then I walked into this room, and there's this giant 30-foot painting of pirates in a pirate ships battling, and the the cannons firing off and the swords and everything. And when I saw that, it was the first time in my life that art came alive, that I realized that someone could create something that actually got me engaged. And so that was a monumental moment in my life and my interest in pursuing art. So when I saw that ship that you had done, I immediately flashed back to that moment.
Oh, I'm glad you said that, Eric. That's a beautiful way of putting into words what I'm not so good at putting into words. But I am doing that, just that. I'm trying to recapture those paintings that really made me want to become an artist. And I'm at this point in my career where I've been doing a lot of straight up portraitures and straight up still lifes. And I feel like going a little further with the narrative. And so I think this is probably my preliminary investigations into it. And as far as what the painting's about, I'll just say a little more, and then I'll go into the lesson here, which is about, making the painting. I was tentatively calling this painting Judas and the Shark, and I've been looking at a lot of historical, religious, and mythological subjects for interpretation. And that's just a very kind of like 19th century and earlier artist behavior. Artists were constantly looking at history and culture and trying to bring them to life in new ways. And so I think I'm just following a little bit in that. But anyway, what I'm doing right here is I have a very almost done rendered portrait. And remember, this is sort of one of my bread and butter things I do is portraiture. So I'm doing that. I've got the portrait more or less, and I've left this bonnet, which is made of silk and a lot of paper flowers, to the end because it's just not like the key part.
So I just have to, sorry to interrupt you, but did you hire a model and put a model in a costume for this?
Oh, well, I'm pleased you asked that. So it's me. It doesn't look like me. I'm not just a good portrait artist, but I'm a good camouflage artist. So I use myself for a lot of paintings. I have a huge wig collection. This is one of my wigs, one of my costumes. So these are real items, and then the background's made up. So yeah, I'm mixing a lot of different reference material. And I kind of like to do a little bit of what I call facial feature drift. So, you get to a period where you've done enough likenesses and portraits and kind of similar to what the old masters did. And, they weren't always doing likenesses. And so I kind of start sort of with a quote unquote self-portrait, and I just let the features drift a little bit and I see what I can come up with that's different. So I learned that a little bit from Odd Nerdrum. I noticed when I was there in 2008 in Norway that he never seemed to capture likenesses, even though he was very capable of doing them, because I could see he'd done a lot of self-portraits and portraits of his family, and they were running around the studio there. So it was quite obvious to me that he was very good at likenesses. But that intrigued me, and then I started to think about William Waterhouse and just some of the other, pre-Raphaelite painters, and maybe some of the more recent ones where you can put a black and white photo next to, of the model next to the finished painting, and you can go, oh, that's not quite the same, and then you imagine that's probably what they were doing in history too.
Well, as Sargent said, nobody will know the difference in 100 years.
Right, and I think another artist said it will look like you if someone would argue with him.
Well, what's interesting to me is I have 26, 28 portraits, as I mentioned, by some of the greatest living artists, and every one of them gets the likeness different. They're all close, but they're all different. And if you were to look at some of these, you go, that's not the same person. But some of them, of course, they get it right on. But the best part is when someone does something that it has their own touch and their own artistic feel to it. And that's when it really gets good. So I'll tell you what I'll do is I'll put up different portraits throughout the different broadcasts on the wall back here so people can see the different ones. There's also a website called The Portrait Project, which has most of them. I haven't posted them all there.
Yeah, you mentioned Sargent. He said that he looked for the animal in people. So he always tried. I always tell my students he did a little bit of caricature, and to make the painting a work of art and his own, and that's really instructive because he was living around the beginning of the dawn of photography, and now we're right in it. I mean, we're online streaming on digital cameras, and I think that the artist needs to. There's so many things the artist can do, but one of the things the artist can do for sure is to present their own version, maybe of reality, rather than a facsimile of a photo. So I think it's always a compliment if something looks different. I don't always want to hear it looks like a photo. That's not always a good thing to hear.
Yeah. That's in some ways that's an insult to some of us, right? Oh, it looks just like a photograph.
Yeah. Well,
can you tell us a little bit about what you're doing here?
Absolutely. So I am rendering some of these silk flowers, and I've just left a lot of this in the kind of a block-in stage. So I don't think I have any examples of the block-in stage left because this is such an advanced stage now. But at the top, you can kind of see that there's some like canvas showing, and there's just room for a lot of extra details to be put in, but sometimes I also just block things in very accurately. So I've done that around the face here, and basically so much of the painting is now done. So it's merely a manner. It's kind of like a victory lap. It's time to just go in and fill in all the fun, juicy details. And so, like I said in the beginning, this is going to be a silk bonnet. So one of the nice things about painting silk is that you really are like doing one of the most fun fabrics. There's a lot of different sheen that gets caught on a portrait. So here, for example, you can see there's a warm shadow side of this ivory silk, and then there's blue halftone that's possibly coming from the sky, or maybe it's just an optical blue or an optical gray, which is the term a lot of painters use to separate their warm lights from their warm darks. And I love painting white or ivory or anything like that because it's a color that people think doesn't have a lot of color in it. And they often just use, and I think it's a big mistake, they just use black and white to render white, or maybe some brown.
So you said a cool gray to separate warm lights and warm shadows. Is that right?
That's right. Yeah. So I'm of the classical school where we do warm shadows, warm lights, cool halftones. So if you think of Rubens, Rembrandt, and also a lot of 19th century painters, but especially if you think like 1700s and before, you're going to see this a lot in most of the art. And it's a way to sort of get more volume and form in your portraits. And I think that they especially relied on it back then, pre-photography, when things were moving and the light was changing, because it was a way to organize the basically the form and they did so much imagination, right? Like this was a Rubens, there'd be a flying Cupid on a cloud or something holding some, I don't know what, a bird or something like that. They'd just be all this stuff you couldn't set up. And so they needed to rely on a system to faithfully make these giant, history paintings is what they call them.
Somebody is asking, Iva is asking, could you tell us the colors you mixed for the flesh? I know that they appear to be different colors. I think what she's saying is that, your portraiture tends to push color, I believe. Can you talk about your colors?
Sure. So I like to use a lot of earth colors. And so if I need to warm something up, I'll add a cadmium red or something like that later. So there is some cadmium red on the lips here. I do some glazing with alizarin crimson or rose madder. But most of what you're seeing are ochres, umbers, red iron oxides. So that could be anything from like what you might call a Venetian red or a hematite or a purple ochre. Basically, it's almost like straight up earth colors here. And then you can see some strong greens and blues. And I used to use earth greens, but now I just use, the kind of greens you might consider for landscape, like Viridian, and you just you mix it down quite a bit so it doesn't take over, what I like to do is I like to take colors that exist in the rest of the picture. So I have a green silk dress here. And so you can see that is reflecting into the face, even if it's just a little bit. And that keeps this poster collage effect from happening where, especially if you're mixing references, which is what I'm doing a lot. If you have like 30 different references in one picture, you want to make sure that they're not looking like you cut them out of a scrapbook and pasted them on separately. They need to have the same lighting effect. But the base is, earth colors. So I can run down more colors, like as if I were giving a supply list, which I have on my website, by the way, and I think that the conference will have it. But it's a lead white, which is very important. So I just got some new lead white in the mail from Natural Pigments yesterday. Mm-hmm. And it's there was a big scare. Everyone was worried about their lead white. I don't know if you guys were you don't worry about that. And I was even using titanium for the first time because I was painting this giant life-size great white shark, and I was like, there's no way I'm going to use all my lead white on this shark.
Well, it's expensive too.
Expensive too on a first layer, so I was taking out some titanium. It was fun. But anyway, so it's important. And then I used to use vermilion in lieu of cadmium red, but that is also going the way of the dodo. And so I'm now using a lot more cadmium red. And there's nothing wrong with cadmium red. I used it all the time throughout my school years. And it was only recently got interested in historical pigments. So over here on the Rembrandt copy side, there would be more lapis lazuli, there would be more vermilion, there would be lead tin yellow, malachite, a few more historical pigments just for fun. Though I want to say, it's very important to use artist quality materials, but the painting is as good as the painter. So I do favor a large palette. And I think at the moment I have 20 colors out. Okay. Let me hold it up. But that's because I do a lot of still life, so I need a lot of color for those flowers, which you don't see in this painting at the moment, but some other ones have it. But this is just kind of how my brain works. So people have asked me, they'll see me holding like 30 brushes. I've only got started, so I don't have 30 yet. And they'll say, how do you remember what color is on each one? And I say, I just do, So for me, that works. And so I'm very about getting people to, use the kind of palette or color mixing that works for them. So, I have friends that used full color palettes and then they left school and they sort of gravitated back to almost black and white. Very masterful black and white. They really use color, but they hide it in there. I think it's a personal preference. So I don't want to say one way or another exactly what, someone should paint with. What they choose is what's interesting about their work too.
I had an epiphany. I had cataract surgery a year ago, January. And all of a sudden, for the first time in years, I could see color. My wife used to complain that my paintings all looked very yellow and very brown. And I don't think I realized what I was doing, but once I could see color, I got so inspired because I could see purples and blues and violets and other colors that I had not seen really effectively in years. And so now I'm trying to put more color in my work.
That's a beautiful story. Yeah, and it's do you think that you just forgot what they looked like because you hadn't seen them as vibrantly for years, or that it
Yeah, I
wasn't?
forgot what they looked like. I mean, I assumed they looked like I didn't know I had a problem until I believed I had a problem at the end, but it was not until I had the first eye done that I could A and B between the two, and one looked brown and muddy and gray, and the other was bright and vibrant, and it was so exciting.
Mm,
Really worth doing. And then, of course, I got better lenses, and so now I have perfect vision at distance and close up. So it's
yay,
just revolutionary for me.
wonderful. Yeah, that's I think that kind of discussion there goes a lot to explain palette choices in history, because there's always seems to have been a little bit of a war between the limited paleters and the what they called in the 19th century. They used to say there's three kinds of painters. There's value painters, who don't care much about color. There's drawing painters, and then there's color painters. And for some reason, the color painters were kind of like seen as not being able to draw very well, and vice versa. And I can't help but think it might have to do with the viewer, the eye of the beholder, as they say too. Um, but yeah, that would be why someone
Well,
like
we all
you.
know Monet couldn't see in his latter years, and so his colors changed.
Oh yeah. And they also say that he worked from a lot of photographs, and photographs at that early time were black and white, so that could also be part of it. He wasn't looking at real life maybe as much
Could be.
either. Um, but yeah, I've had a couple of students too who so some people look at my color palette and they go, "Ooh," and they shy away, and other people were like, "Wow, this is amazing! I'm having so much fun painting,"
Well,
and
there's not a right or wrong. I mean, it's got to be what you want it to be. Dennis Marshall is asking, are you using any painting medium? And if so, what is it?
so I have two painting mediums. I have a thing called oleo gel, which I don't know if people are familiar with. It's basically linseed oil, and it's that kind of worm-looking S shape. That's just the way it came out of the tube.
Yeah.
That's oleo gel, and then slightly to the upper right, there's some amber-colored Italian varnish, which is not actually a varnish. It is merely a another what they call thixotropic painting gel, which helps with transparent glazes, and it basically kind of acts like molasses on the paintbrush, and it keeps the colors and the paintbrush very like instead of like you put a little bit of pressure and the paint goes everywhere, it just kind of stays, and you massage it in, and
Nice.
so it's a great blending tool. And yeah, and I actually have tried to get away from like using too much medium. So I actually use a lot of bristle brushes, which is what I'm using now. I'm using like a very small pointed bristle. And so that allows me, without actually really exerting more pressure physically, to exert more pressure on the paint, which spreads it, which means I don't have to have like a watercolor soupy medium, which I think is, maybe good at the beginning stages, but at the later stages, it can be hard if you're trying to get this level of detail. Things are just sliding around too much.
That's a good observation. I've always assumed that for glazing, I needed to use a soft brush. I've never thought about using a bristle.
You can. I actually have a couple, and I recently went on a shopping trip for more tiny little Kolinsky sables, because I'm doing a lot of castles and clouds, and those castles and clouds tend to be very tiny, and so they need really small brushes. So I'm a big believer in the brush should match the thing you're working on, and I get a lot of people as well who've been told to use the biggest brush possible, or certainly like use this, use that, and it's all good advice. But with any good advice, if you take it too far, it can get you in trouble. So I see a lot of people struggling with details because they're using too big a brush, or maybe they thought they had to use a sable only for a glaze, and it's not spreading enough. And if you use both, you can use the bristle to sort of get the paint on, and then you use a soft brush to sort of like finesse it. You double up. So you can do a lot of different things like that. So yeah, there isn't that much paint going on at this layer. Most of the paint has already been put on, and so um, I like this. It's I have a method where I don't paint into what they call a couch. This is another very old 19th century term where one would put a very thin kind of like mask layer on and then just repaint the whole thing. I don't do that. I kind of spot paint at this point, and it allows me to keep my underdrawing and to just kind of keep adding. And one of the painters I studied, who I wanted to paint like, but I just couldn't, was called Antonio Mancini. So he had a lot.
My favorite. He's my all-time favorite.
Yeah, he just does things, and you're just like, why did he put that texture, that color there? But if you study him, he really just seems to just keep going and going, layer after layer. And the beauty in his work was seeing the calligraphy of his thought process and his line process. And so I thought, well, why hide all that? Why not let it show? So by getting better at matching values, you don't have to repaint everything.
Seeing Mancini in person is just mind-boggling. We were on one of our fine art trips, and we went to a private home, a collection in a private home, and they had like 6 of them. And I just couldn't stop staring at them. I mean, there were hundreds of other pieces of art, but those things just stood out.
Yeah. They really are special. Whenever I see a new one, I always spend a long time studying it, and it's usually at some kind of fine art fair, and the dealers think I'm going to buy it. So I end up with a catalog or something in Italian, but no painting.
Mancini went insane. He actually ended up spending the rest of his life in an insane asylum.
Oh, I did hear about that. I think though he got better in Monty Python, but he had a nephew that was looking after him. But the little boy in a lot of the early paintings, that guy grew up and realized that Mancini wasn't managing his finances properly, and he helped him. And I think he spent his last years watching black and white movies on the Capitoline Hill in Rome. There was a movie theater. So he had 4 good years before he died, being taken care of. And his nephew was in his 20s or 30s by that point or something. So he was.
Well, what I love about what you do, Teresa, is that you have clearly your own voice. That you're not trying to be any other artist out there. You may have learned techniques from them, but you've adopted your own voice, your own style, and anyone who sees any of your work instantly knows it's Oaxaca. So I think that's fabulous. And how did you come to that? Did you start out kind of doing that, or were you kind of following everybody else's path for a while?
I think I've always been kind of following my own path, and I think the interesting thing about following your own path with realism is that you can't always start off following your path, because you have to learn, and so you need to be humble and maybe submit to some instructors or a school, or some form of self-study. I know a lot of people do the workshop conference circuit, and that's another form of studying. And I think without that, it could be difficult to just follow your own path. And so I do encourage people to, if they want to get the certain skills they need, so that when they're ready to follow their own path, there is less friction in that, less self-doubt in the ability. But I've always found it quite easy to follow my own path creatively, I would say. You just kind of do what you want to do. You do what feels interesting or challenging, and you try to improve at it. And
I had a woman who told me she went. I won't mention the school, but she spent 4 years at one of the ateliers in Italy, and they're very, very dogmatic about you. This is the process that you follow. These are the colors that you use, and she was a little bothered by it, but she stuck with it, which was the right thing to do, because she had to learn their way. But she went to Realism Live, and she said, I had no idea all these different ways of approaching things. And she said it opened up a whole new world for her, things that she couldn't imagine on her own by watching somebody like you paint, or watching Graydon Parrish, or somebody else.
Absolutely. It's a huge eye opener to be able to sample so many professionals and contemporaries, you know, because it's one thing to see all the art in museums, but I think our culture has a way of seeing a lot of fine art that's in museums is dead and locked away in the past. And to realize that, you know, actually there's a lot of people practicing in real life that you can meet who, you know, are very nice and generous and will teach you things, or sell you a painting or make you a painting, you know, that's I think like a deeper form of it. And it's well, you know, it's fantastic, yeah. And there isn't just one way. I think there's many ways, and they're all just a gateway into exploring the craft and channeling the creativity.
So can you talk to us about the keys to painting silk if somebody's trying to paint silk on their own? It's kind of hard to tell because it's not a real close-up shot.
I can get you a more close-up shot. Let me do that. And in the meantime, yes, I will say that the key to silk is all about reflections. And so it's all about. Is that better?
Yeah, if we can see the area you're working on.
Sure, I'll make sure I'm working on a. I'm so spoiled to have giant computer screens now that I don't always realize things look small. Sorry about that. Okay, here I'm going to work right here.
Right.
So, you got your highlight. So I'm going to use like a lead tin yellow, really thick, just out of the tube with a clean, dry brush. And I'm getting a little bit of that kind of like impasto effect, and it's really rolling the ribbon around. And over here you can see the shadow, quite dark, helpfully dark. And then there's some halftone here. And then there's a little bit of a cool accent there. And then you do the same thing here. We have a dark shadow, and then we have a cool halftone accent. And it just keeps going, but just in many ways. And that's the thing about fabric, you know. It just like, it doesn't really act predictably. I mean, there's some pleats and there's cuts in the fabric, you know, an artist designed it. But as far as the light effects, it's different on every facet. And so you just have to make peace with that and be patient and just start recording all the different little facets of color, or of value if you don't want to think too much in color. And but I like color, and I think it's a way to get the form to change in a more efficient way than just by what they call a value modeling, you know, on the grayscale. Because the problem with value modeling is that it's very easy to over model. If you're using color and value. If you're just using black and white, you can model away forever. You know, you see that in charcoal drawing. And then a lot of students who've been charcoal drawing for like too long and not painting in color, they have a hard time transitioning because they have to compress values more in color. It's very important. So all of this is a little bit of a problem solving, I would say. And so it's very dynamic and quite exciting. Still like painting, you know. In the old days, a bonnet like this would have been stuck up on a mannequin. You wouldn't paint it from life on someone's head. One, it would be a waste of the portrait model's time. But you could talk to them and stuff, but they wouldn't want to sit that still. And every time they moved, one of these folds would change forever, and you'd never get that crispness. So you got to do it from still.
So you're doing it from a photograph, or are you doing it from a bonnet on a mannequin?
I do both. I have the bonnet. I have the mannequin. But yeah, I like the photograph because I find as especially lately with I have a lot of paintings kind of in progress stacking up, and so to save space, it's easier to put things in a digital file than to have these. Have you ever been in one of those artist studios where there's some clearly rotten fruit or something strange, and you know, you say to your friend or you say to this person,
dead fish,
let's clean that up. No, don't touch it. I've been working on that for a year. It's just kind of crazy.
Somebody asked, Joanna asked, what do you mean by compressing values?
Yeah, that's an interesting one to describe. It's a little bit like if you have a thought, compressing it to as simple as like one phrase rather than saying it in a paragraph or a page. So the idea is that you would try to make this thing look round, in this case, this little bow, in as few value planes as possible. So if each brushstroke is, or each plane is a value, you want to use as few as possible. Now, I do blend, so I'm actually going a little more complicated than that. But in general, the less fussing, the better. Otherwise, the picture can fall apart from a distance because you've put way too much attention into one little area, and you've forgotten that it has to work with all the other areas. And so, if I make well, luckily this is one of the brightest parts in the painting. But let's say if I was to make this all way too bright, this kind of ivory bow, and then I actually got to something that really was white, like I have a great white shark down here on a platter, that would be off. I wouldn't be balancing my values properly. I would run out of room to put everything in a way that was imitating the way light falls in real life. And so in real life, there's a fall of light. It comes from the sun, and it diminishes as it goes down. That is if you're painting sunlight. If you're painting artificial light, it's the same thing. It's just coming from a lot closer. It's probably a little warmer. But so value compression is just something that has to be done. And as one of my old teachers was very happy saying at one of my old schools, there's just no way you can compete with nature. We don't have the range in these pigments.
Right. Samara, who I think is from India, I'm not sure, says, hi, Teresa and Eric. Thank you for introducing Teresa and her art. I'm addicted now to her paintings and her classes. So I will ask Christina to put in the comments your website so people can find out about your classes or where to buy your artwork. And you guys, we want to support Teresa. She's doing a terrific job. And I think historically, Teresa, you're going to go down as very important as one of the great artists of our generation because of the approaches that you're taking and your unique thought process and your boldness and your courage.
Oh, well, thank you so much, Eric. And where'd this go? Here we are.
I want to point out while Teresa's doing whatever she's doing that there is if you look at the edge of the bonnet.
Oh, I'm back.
That's all right.
Sorry, someone called me. I don't know. It knocked off my thing.
Okay. If you look at the edge of the bonnet where it's meeting the blue, look how soft that edge is. Teresa, you want to talk just briefly about edges because a lot of artists don't understand that concept.
Absolutely. Well, edges, the way I see them, if you're thinking about, there's two ways you can think about it. In like camera terms, it's depth of field. And so if we had a shallow depth of field, you would see this detail, and then you wouldn't really see the details around the clouds that are hundreds of feet away. So that's one way of looking at it, depth of field. The other way is when you describe things that are three-dimensional, there's going to be a turning point where, and that's actually what values are all describing too. There's going to be a turning point in the values where you no longer see the side plane of the face, or you no longer see, the other side here of this bow. And in that sense, you need to make a decision. Either you can do a very little micro turning of the edge, which is basically, turning things darker, or you could just kind of this is everyone's favorite. You can just kind of soften it, literally just make a little feathery mark. And that acts sort of like a shorthand. And it says to the viewer, this edge is turning, or this is soft, or there's a lot of little feathers in here maybe that you're just not seeing with your eye because you don't have a eagle vision or something. And so those are what edges are about. And one of the reasons artists are always being told about edges is that they couple of reasons. Our eyes are a little bit like cameras, and so we tend to want to focus on one thing. So we might focus on the nose, and then we might focus on the bonnet, and then if this were a real ship, I would focus on the real ship, and everything would be sharp and in focus, but then you wouldn't have an illusion because in real life we tend to focus on something in the foreground or the distance, and other things blur a little bit because we're shifting our eyes all the time. Everything seems in focus, but it's not really. It's your brain remembering what it looked like a few seconds ago or something like that. And so that's one of the ways to get illusionistic painting. So here I'm kind of adding some soft edges right here.
Well, I'll tell you what, you've taught us a lot. Why don't you come back on camera so we can see you, and we'll chat for a second before we say goodbye.
Alrighty.
Oh, what a beautiful painting.
Oh, thank you so much.
I need to get something of yours in my collection for my museum.
Oh, that would be fun.
Yeah,
I love being in collections.
All right, terrific. Well, it's nice we can see more of the painting now. And it's great to have you on, Teresa. We will put your website and information in the comments if people want to do that. And what are you going to do on Realism Live? What is the plan?
I have an even bigger painting. It's probably
Bigger
like
painting.
10 feet by 10 feet. So this was like a small one for me now.
Wow.
So it's also life size in that, well, the four figures are, life size. So I have a Garden of Eden painting. So it has dozens of small creatures and large creatures. It has a giant great white shark with a person sitting on it, picking some fruit from an apple, kind of orange, peach, like one of those mixed trees where they put 50 different fruits on one tree. And I've taken all the trees and animals from my local runs and boat trips around the wetlands area I live in, and just also from the internet, because I have some exotic things in there.
Well, terrific. Teresa, thank you so much for being a part of the show today. I'm having some internet issues, and I apologize if I'm cutting up, but thank you for being a part of things, and we'll see you next week on Realism Live.
I'm really looking forward to it. Thank you.
We learned a lot today. This is awesome, and we'll have to talk and figure out how to get that portrait done. We'll talk soon.
Yes.
Well, our guest today, Teresa Oaxaca, and I hope you've enjoyed it. I want to remind you guys that Realism Live is coming up, and you can still get bonuses, 2 bonus videos that you get if you sign up before Sunday. Here's just a little short piece about Realism Live.
Join the world for Realism Live, the ultimate realism learning event, November 10th through the 13th. 4 days of online art lessons from top realism masters from around the globe. Learn to paint nature, people, cityscapes, flowers, and more. Become a better artist. Click the link to learn more and get our free ebook.
Okay, well, Realism Live coming up next week. I probably won't be on the air next week because of that, because I'll be there. But it's going to be a lot of fun. We have hundreds and 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 hundreds of people signed up. And we would love for you to join us. It's a great way to really boost your painting, but also to become part of the family and get to know everybody, get to ask questions of the artists. You'll be able to actually ask specific questions to Teresa, and that'll be really nice. And so make sure you do that. I want to mention to you that you can subscribe to this program, Art School Live. You can find us on YouTube at Streamline Art, and you can also subscribe or follow me on Instagram and Facebook. And if you go to Instagram, you'll learn all about the new portrait competition, which is going on this week only. So no time to paint anything new. I mean, you can if you want to. We're going to give away a VIP ticket to Art School, to Realism Live, and also some other gifts. So make sure that you go there and find out about the hashtag so you can post it. All right. Well, thank you guys for being here today. I'm Eric Rhodes, and we will see you next time. Bye-bye.